Hi guys, welcome back to Voiced Vulnerabilities. I'm your host, Seungju Kim, and we're going to be sharing our struggles and common experiences just to make topics, accessible that aren't well talked about. So today, actually, I have a very special guest. Actually, it's more of a collaboration because she also has a podcast. It's called Curious Mind in Progress, and she is Louiza, and exciting thing, she's actually going to be joining University of Amsterdam Media and Culture. So anyone out there joining Media and Culture, you should follow her definitely. But anyways, today we'll be talking about diet culture and about our eating disorder experiences. I just wanted to put a trigger warning for those out there still struggling or easily triggered by any topics about diet culture or eating disorder. If it's triggering, I would advise you to probably click off of this.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Louisa, so today we're going to talk about diet culture and its toxicity and its effects on society, young girls, and yeah, just like body image. What do you want to say first about diet culture? What do you have to say about it?
So to me, I think diet culture has always been something that's kind of more about science, which I don't really understand. And no one ever questioned dieting itself. It's more like, oh, if you're obese or overweight, you should diet so that you lose weight. And it never works. Like for many people, they just don't lose weight or they regain even more. And no one has ever questioned the dieting itself. I feel like everyone's always questioning themselves and their own ability to be disciplined enough and to be strong enough about it and to just do it. So that is something that gets me started in the beginning, and like with this whole thought process of maybe it's not our fault and maybe the system is just what's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the whole thing is like they're all fad diets, right? It's all from like the industries wanting to gain advantage of us feeling insecure about ourselves, and they're basically as I said, taking advantage, profiting from us feeling insecure, feeling like we're not enough, putting all these like impossible standards, models, and just ideals that people need to reach up to. It doesn't even need to be like people who are obese. There are still people who are perfect, like perfectly sized. Like, I'm not saying that there is a perfect size, but I'm just saying a healthy person is still pressured to lose weight because of what the beauty industry says, what the media says. And as you said, is like such a horrible society and culture manifested into so many young girls, so many men, and just women. And it just produces such like a dissatisfaction about a person's body that isn't even like actually there, that the standard isn't even actually there.
And I think it's also a standard you're not able to fully reach it. Like you're never going to reach that standard, and 1% of people looks like that, and that just leaves me wondering how, like, you're never going to be satisfied with your body if you strive for something that's impossible to reach. And an example that's just for me the best example to give basically is, I don't know if you know the supermodel, she's called Romy Strid, she's also Dutch.
Yeah,
and
I do know.
And she's like she was really trained, really thin, like Victoria's Secret angel, and she couldn't get her period for 6 years. She was infertile for she wasn't able to be what she was born to do, being a woman. Like she couldn't get kids, so when she wanted to get pregnant, she had to stop working out the way she was used to, and had to start doing yoga and Pilates, like softer ways of working out, because she was just working out 6 to 7 hours a day to be able to look like that. And honestly, as a working person that lives her day-to-day life, you don't have the capacity to work out for such a long amount of time. It's just
that's the exact thing, because
Mhm.
people are taking like bodybuilders or like, you know, fitness like YouTubers and models who use that as like a job. They do that like 24/7, but people are using that as like a standard that they should reach, but that's not an attainable lifestyle if you're a student, or as you said, if you're working. And it really gets me questioning just how malicious like the beauty industry is, really using that 1% and saying that that is the normal body, that is the beautiful body that everyone should have, and making young girls really insecure.
Yes, exactly. And then we start to believe that that is the body to have. And it just happened yesterday that I'm reading a book that has like a cover on it with an old picture, or a picture of an older woman, like from the 1800s, I think. And back then the beauty standard was completely different. Like it was pretty to have like curves and a belly, because it showed that you have the money to eat well and to eat a lot and to be really nourished. And my little sister, she's 9 at the moment, and she was like, ew, that's so gross, that's fat. And that just leaves me wondering, because we're so programmed to think that fatness, and the woman, like, she wasn't fat, she was just curvy, that we perceive that as disgusting or like not normal, overweight, whatever those terms or names you want to call it. And that just really shows me that there's no real or good body type, because it's all relative, and it all goes down to how we were raised and what kind of went into the image that society created. So just accept the body you have, because every type is perfect and every body type is good. Also, sorry for the vacuuming that's going on in the background. I hope
no problem.
bad.
No problem. Just usual household things. But yeah, like, girls, if you're out there, it's super normal to have that belly. It's for you to do your normal functions. Like, as women, we're supposed to have that body fat. It's kind of unattainable. It's unhealthy to the point if you really want to be super fit like the ones in YouTube or like in Instagram. It's just unattainable and kind of unhealthy. And it's normal for you to have that belly fat. But talking about how you're raised, I just wanted to also give an example of how kind of I was raised in Korea. I don't know in other places, but in Asian cultures, there is an immense amount of like obsession over appearances. So for example, if we're in like a big family gathering, the first thing that like my aunt or my uncle, anyone would mention is my appearance or someone else's appearance. So, oh, you've gained weight. Oh, you've lost weight. How pretty. Or, oh, like your nose is kind of like handsome, or like, oh, your nose is bad, but at least your eyes save it. That's kind of like the first thing that people say, like literally in like family gatherings. So I was kind of raised in a culture where, you know, I was taught that being fat or overweight, having like being a bit chubby was the equivalent of ugly, and being a bit skinny was the equivalent of pretty and being feminine. So that was also how I was programmed, and how it could be programmed in younger girls. And there is one example that really broke my heart, and this was around like when I was in high school, and there was a girl who was around 5-6 years old, and she was a bit on the chubbier side, but it was because like she was very tall compared to the other classmates. But she comes up to me and she says, what is the magic, like what is your tip of losing weight?
Yeah.
That's what she told me. And I was shocked that a 5-year-old who should be just worried about you know, her friends and like playing outside and just having fun with all the foods that she could have. She was concerned with losing weight and her body image. That just shocked me so much, and how much it's been manifested in society and how earlier on it's being yeah, inflicted on little girls and boys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we can maybe talk about later, that it's also happening to boys, but I mean, the main group of people that's happening to is girls or women. But I have a similar example as well. And I mean, I've been raised in like the German culture, so I guess it really doesn't matter what culture you're raised in. It's I think it's pretty similar in every culture, but I mean, from what I've heard, in Korea, it's more extreme, that the first thing they ask you is like, oh, did you lose weight? Did you gain weight? Why does it matter? They should ask you, oh, did you become smarter? Did you learn more? Did you study? How's life? But anyways, I don't want to judge. But my little cousin, she's 6 now, and she has 2 best friends, and they're like really, really, really skinny. But sometimes kids are like that. I was like that as well. I wouldn't gain weight even if I would eat a lot. So whatever, everybody's different. And they'd say, like, they would call her fat. She's not fat. She's 6 years old. She has a normal body. And my cousin, she loves to eat. She loves food. She's really passionate about it. She gets really excited. And then she was starting to worry, like, oh, do I eat too much? Am I really fat? Like they said, is that really the truth? And then she kind of had like a stomach ache after eating at her grandma's, and that would continue for like 2 weeks and would get better, but then worse again. So she had diarrhea, but not because of, it was just an illness. But then she would get thinner because, you know, she would not eat as much, and she started to like it and like go to my aunt and be like, oh, you see, my stomach is more flat. She's 6 years old, what the hell? And it hurts my heart, because she shouldn't even worry. She shouldn't even begin to form a thought where she worries about what her appearance is like. It was 6 years old. And it really scares me that it starts so early, and I don't even know how to approach that, because you don't want to put too much weight into that whole subject. You don't want to give it too much of a thought, I guess. But on the other hand, you have to, because otherwise she will just confront herself with that over and over again. And I just really hope that she doesn't really see those friends anymore. But then seriously, we're girls. Why are girls shaming girls? That's a whole nother subject. But that just scares me, that little girls are saying that to each other when she's so far away from being fat. And even if she were to be fat, that's not your comment to make. That's not a nice way to, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just at a loss for words when I heard that. And
yeah. And like, understand how how frustrating and stressful it is, because you know the consequences of it, like the long-term consequences of it, because once you struggle with body image and that continues on, it can develop into body dysmorphia. And body dysmorphia, goodness, is like an extreme version of like struggling with body image. Like, you know, like how your cousin saw herself as fat when she was actually quite skinny. That's a form of body dysmorphia already. Seeing yourself in the mirror and seeing kind of another body size, that's body dysmorphia. Seeing your face and obsessing over a small thing and thinking that turns you into a monster, that's body dysmorphia. And it kind of gets ingrained in your mind, and it's constantly kind of there and makes you anxious, just to look in the mirror and to even accept yourself. So this is a huge like self-image, yes, but also like self-confidence problem that girls are facing.
Yeah. And I don't know if, I think I have like a personal experience to share with that. I mean, with like an eating disorder or body dysmorphia, there's always ups and downs. It's never linear. Sometimes you're better, sometimes you're worse. And I just had that experience, like I think 1.5 weeks ago, where I was mentally okay, but I'd look in the mirror and literally it would look like my thighs went like this. I would look in the mirror and it appeared to me as if it was growing bigger. And I was looking in the mirror, I was like, how is that possible? Like, I didn't take any drugs, like I'm not under any influence, and it just appears huge, gigantic, when that is so far from reality. And yeah, just to support your what you were saying, that's really scary to me, and that just shows me that it is an illness, and that even this body dysmorphia is an illness. And I feel like it's even more commonly spread than EDs. I think that can be obsessing over a pimple in your face and obsessing over your ears or your nose, like you said. But yeah, it all goes into each other. Yeah, it's connected.
Yeah. Well, since you've opened up with your personal experience, are you ready to share your experience with your eating disorder?
Yeah, sure. So I've been also struggling, like for me, even calling it that, first of all, as someone that's not underweight and that manages to eat like at least 2 meals a day most of the time, I never felt privileged enough, or I never felt like I had the rights to speak about that or to even call it that. I think the first time I even called it that name was like 1.5 months ago or something. And for me, it started when I was like 16, and I would go to the gym and work out, and it just started in ways of like punishing myself for eating certain foods. And then at some point it was so bad that I couldn't go to the gym anymore. And then I just said, I have to stop now because it's becoming unhealthy and I don't want it to be like this. So I stopped working out completely and had to like find a new way of liking it. And that I did through yoga, because it's more of a spiritual thing. And you don't work out to become skinny or to become trained, but you work out to become fit and healthy. And then I was fine for a while. And then I got the mono-Q. Do you know what that is? The mono-Q something is the fever you get. And I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't think I have.
Sometimes you get it when you're younger, and then you have like fever and a throat infection, or you can get a cold, and it just goes on for a few months even. But I was lucky enough to only have it for a month. But anyways, I wasn't able to eat for 1.5 weeks because my throat was so swollen. And then I got really, really skinny and almost underweight, like for my size and like what I weighed. And I liked it, I loved it. And that's when the fear of like gaining weight again started. And when I started working out again and all those things, and then it was kind of getting better again. And then I went to Canada, and what I said in the beginning, when we weren't recording yet, the lady I stayed with, she, I'm trying to keep it brief, but the lady I stayed with, she said like, oh, are you sure you want to eat that much during the day? Like you said, you only wanted to eat when you're hungry. Why are you eating so much? And she meant it out of a different context, but it triggered me so hard that I would only eat breakfast, and I was like starving the whole day and I wouldn't eat. And then at night we only had like vegetables. So I wasn't really satisfied with that. And then I would just eat everything I could find in the kitchen. So it was more like, I guess, binge eating. And there were some times where I'd like throw up, but that wasn't really my thing. And then when I came home, I would only eat twice a day and like fast 16 hours and not eat sweet stuff. So to me, that wasn't really an eating disorder, but I knew that I had an unhealthy way of consuming food and thinking about it. And it would also consume my thoughts all the time. So that's when I realized, okay, this is not normal or what it's supposed to be. And like I said, then if I was fine again, or I kind of got into intuitive eating, which is really nice. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'm an
And it's
advocate of
really-
intuitive eating.
Oh, that's so nice.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 recommend getting into that, because to me, that's the only way to eat. I don't really, that's like, if you've known dieting and you've known intuitive eating is like the holy grail, and like that's where I want to be at someday.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Berlin and worked at a movie set, and their like meals were very planned, and we had a lot of food available always, and I would gain like weight and would feel really uncomfortable, like fat, like I've never weighed so much. Oh, and I also, what I completely forgot is that I stopped taking the female hormones, and then my body completely changed, and I gained like almost 10 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so unhappy. And that's when it also kind of all started. And when the experience in Canada, it kind of all played together, and I was not happy with my body for a year. I hated it. Like, I not happy, and I would feel overweight, and even knowing I wasn't didn't matter. And then I started, when I was in Berlin working on the movie set, I just felt like I had lost all of my control, like over what I would put into my body, when, why. And then I started to try to not eat as much, and even throw up sometimes, and all those things. And I couldn't work out because I just couldn't get myself to do it. I was like so frustrated with the whole subject that, yeah, I don't know, you're going to speak about it later as well, but I find working out really hard when I'm in a really bad headspace.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic, because you need that to get better, but you cannot. I couldn't get myself to do it. And then it kind of got it just got mentally really bad for me. And I always tried to balance out what I would eat by skipping meals, not eating, working out a lot. And even if I was tired, I would still try to get myself to work out and go for really long walks, and just try to burn it off, and would only let myself have food when I burned off something. And then even throwing up regularly. And yeah, and I came home, went to my dad's, where it was really bad as well, but I didn't know how to like speak to him. And then I came back to my mom's, and I started telling her, really calling at that, because I was so trapped in my head and so stressed by it, that I was like, okay, even if I'm not underweight, like there's something that I want to speak about, and that's atypical anorexia, and I don't think that many people know about it. And you said, or I'm not gonna speak for you, we can speak about it later as well, but that's something I wrote about and learned about, and was really easy for me to or it was easier for me to accept that I have that, in a sense, after knowing that that exists. So even if you're not underweight and you don't fit all the boxes, you can still have an eating disorder, even if it's just mild. And I kind of don't want to get into everything that I did so much anymore, because I've already been talking for a long time now. But I know that I have to change something, because in my mind, I'm still stressed by it. And at the moment it's fine, but I know it's going to get worse again, and it has been worse again. It's just ups and downs. And you're worthy of getting therapy, even if you don't check all the boxes. And it's so important to get help, even if you're not underweight, because at some point you're going to be, if you're going to continue. And the best example for me is someone that weighs 120 kilos and starts to lose 10 kilos in a week can have an eating disorder, because it's not normal to lose 10 kilos in a certain amount of time, or however many kilos. And we don't see him as anorexic because he's not thin, but that's the worst place you can be at, is severely underweight. And it's the most, like, the illness is the most common illness for people to die off of. So just seek help, even if you have, if you don't check all the boxes. That's just what I have to tell myself, because I'm not there yet at all. And for me, it's hard to be like, oh, I deserve therapy, and I deserve to call it that, and I deserve to speak about it. like I said in the beginning. But yeah, just it's hard and it's a struggle, and I feel like for everyone it's going to be a struggle for the rest of their lives. Not to be negative, but we're going to be faced with different phases throughout our whole lives, and especially with Corona. But yeah, it's just so important to take care of ourselves, basically.
Yeah.
And to be healthy and happy. And there's so much more to life than this. I don't know. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. So right now, are you getting therapy or not?
Not yet, but
Okay.
I've applied, and
Mhm.
my mom's also really behind that, trying to get me to do it. And it's kind of hard in Germany at the moment because there's not a lot of capacity,
Mhm.
and you mostly get waitlisted, and it just takes time.
Yeah.
But I really need to get behind that. But I'm on it, let's just say that. And at the
Okay.
moment, I'm better. So
Okay.
yeah.
Let's celebrate that though, that your mom like is supportive and that you applied. That's like a huge step.
Yeah, for sure. And that's also something, sharing and opening up is so scary, but so rewarding. And I highly encourage everyone to find someone to talk about it with and to just get support. And that can even be a number you can call. We're also going to link them in the description box, like numbers you can call if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for listening. And maybe you want to share now. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you feel ready.
Yeah. So I did briefly mention it in my first podcast, opening about my general mental health experience, but I didn't really get deep into it. So basically when it started was high school, when I was around 15, 16 years old, actually, same as you, Louisa. But first, I was very into veganism. I just liked, like the new lifestyle and, like advocating for the environment and animals. But soon it became kind of like an obsession. Like I unintentionally started losing weight and started working out a lot. People started complimenting me. So that was kind of like positively reinforced. And yeah, I was like super obsessed for around like 2, 3 years, like about getting abs and just being super fit. And I remember always, every day at school, I was packing a salad for lunch every single day. And at that time, honestly, I didn't know that I was struggling, but I was definitely, because I was very insecure and a lot of my self-worth was based on how I looked and how much I weighed, because I felt quite unnoticed, and I felt like people started noticing me because I started losing weight. So that started, in high school, and then going to university really was the tough one because I lost all like my support system, because in high school I had my parents, I had my friends, I still had threads holding me up, but it was all cut down, when I went to university, because I was all alone, and it was really tough mentally, really, also physically. But yeah, that's when I really went into like anorexia, I would say, and started eating less and less, just really eating vegetables only. Um, and I myself didn't even know that I was losing weight, because when I looked in the mirror, I looked super fat. There's this, when body dysmorphia comes in, like I would look in the mirror constantly, like even hours a day, just like picking at all like my flaws and like sobbing over like how monstrous I looked like, even though I didn't. It's really disastrous to the mind. But yeah, so it kind of started with that, and I started like losing my memory, started losing things. And I remember this one day I was just so weak and so out of my mind, and my headspace was super just foggy, that I broke like 5 pieces of like my glassware or like my plates because I was just so weak and just so undernourished. Um, but yeah, it was really tough because like depression and like anxiety came in together with like anorexia, and I tried to seek treatment, but unfortunately I also got waitlisted, and it took me actually like 6 months to get my first therapist, but it didn't really work out. So second time actually, um, it did work out and I finally got my therapist, but it wasn't like eating disorder specialist. But anyways, I was still trying to hold on to anything, you know, that could help me. So I just happily like agreed to it. But actually going back, I have to like explain this a bit better. So 2019 was when I started university, and my health, my physical health and mental health started deteriorating. And December around then was when I hit my depression and anxiety got worse. And 2020, when Corona hit, I actually went back to Korea because things were online. So I was still doing, you know, school online. But it was then that my mom started telling me, like, you are looking super underweight. Like, yeah, like I could see like my bones sticking out everywhere, and I thought I was fat, which is horrifying. It's terrifying because it could have been a really like bad situation if I was alone. Like it could have been a case where I was, you know, sent to like the emergency room or whatever because I was so undernourished. But that kind of like woke me up into thinking, yeah, I really have a problem and I need to fix this. So I started like actually eating much more, and I actually started this thing called all in, going all in. I don't know if you know it, but it kind of like there's a YouTuber called Stephanie Buttermore, and she was very undernourished too, just super obsessed with like muscle building. She's actually a fitness YouTuber, but she was really like weak and fatigued and just like really foggy. So she basically decided to eat as much as she could until she was full. So basically, when you are in a constant calorie deficit for such a long time, that kind of adds up. So you have that amount of calorie deficit that you're in, and the body kind of wants to get that back. And the amount of calories that you have like that you have missed is just tremendous. So when you start fueling your body again, it the body immediately reacts. The brain reacts and just says like, feed me, feed me, feed me. So what happened to me was that I ate a lot. I ate really like a lot, and it scared me so much. And I think I don't really recommend it to anyone without researching it and without looking into a nutritionist with a nutritionist or a therapist, because it can be like traumatic, the amount of food that you eat, especially when you're not prepared for it. And I think that kind of happened to me. But I did gain the weight that I had to, which was kind of like the healthy weight. But even after that, I struggled, and, you know, I was working out a lot and had to maintain that. And when I went back to the Netherlands, it kind of went bad again. And it actually developed into binge eating disorder. So I experienced kind of like a lot of the types of the eating disorders. So in the Netherlands, when I got back, I started with a therapist that I mentioned. And at this point, as I mentioned, I had gained weight, and it was kind of like in the healthy range. So at first, she diagnosed me with anorexia, but later on, this was actually quite shocking because she wasn't an eating disorder specialist, and she told me, this was online, by the way, she told me to weigh myself, which is, if you know, the biggest trigger ever for someone who has an eating disorder. I was terrified, but, you know, I was like, oh, she's a therapist, so maybe she knows what she's doing. So I got on the scale and I like completely broke down. And I was in shock for like months after that. And basically, when I told her my weight, she said that I wasn't anorexic because I didn't meet the criteria, which again, I think is ridiculous because anorexia isn't just about fitting the BMI. Like, it's ridiculous how people, like medical professionals and therapists, still use the BMI as like a measuring tool of whether or not you have anorexia, because the difference of anorexia and bulimia are huge. Even like the criteria for it are slightly different. But basically, she told me that I didn't suffice for anorexia, so she just put me into bulimia, which was fine, but it was kind of weird because I felt like I was too fat to be anorexic. But anyways, like I just wanted to say like like couple of reasons actually why the BMI is completely false and should not be followed. Actually, the new DSM-5, if you know, is like the diagnostic tool for like the mental disorders. Actually, BMI, according to NPR, I researched this. It was actually founded by a mathematician called Quillet, and he specifically said that it's not a way for an individual to indicate an individual level of fatness. Second of all, there's no proportion of like bone, muscle to fat, like none of that. Third of all, like there are sharp boundaries and it's hinged on decimal places. So basically, if you're like 18.9, then you're anorexic. But if you're 19.0 or above, then you're not anorexic. So that was just super hilarious for me and just super messed up, which is why I would love to like talk about atypical anorexia like sometime later on if we do have the opportunity, because it's such a huge thing. But anyways, so after that, like I was much more in shock and more anxious, and yeah, and then I started I started with binge eating because I was just so anxious, and that's just the way I coped with my emotions. Binge eating episodes are not fun because you eat until your stomach is uncomfortably full, but the only response that you can have is just stuffing yourself to like press away those emotions. And it was just like an extremely dark time for me, and I am not ashamed of it because a lot of people equate it with shame, but honestly, binge eating disorder is 3 times more common than anorexia. So I am opening up about this actually, kind of for the first time in public. But yeah, I started binge eating, and obviously I gained weight, like 10 kilos or whatever. And I hated myself for, yeah, like being overweight, not even overweight, but just looking in the mirror. And as you said, like seeing like huge thighs, huge arms, even though it wasn't, you know? So yeah, that's where I am. I'm going to therapy, but it's not like specialized. So it's not that effective, but I am kind of tackling the things that are kind of underlying. So I am getting better. But as you said, once you struggle with an eating disorder, you kind of keep it with you for life. Not to be discouraging, because once you pick up kind of like the mechanisms, the coping mechanisms, and you know, once you are able to detect, you know, when your eating disorder thoughts come in, then you'll be able to fend for yourself. But yeah, that's where I am. I'm still struggling like you are, Louisa, and it is super hard, and really it's not fun. It's not fun when your whole life is revolved around food and counting how much you have eaten and how much you have worked it off and how good you look or how worthy you are based on how skinny you are. And that's why that's why we're talking about this, because we know that a lot of people struggle with it because of the very toxic diet culture. I know a lot of listeners are, a part of the listeners are probably affected by diet culture, body image, body dysmorphia, and even probably an eating disorder or eating disorders. But just want to say, you're not alone. It's terrible,
No.
but you're not alone. And there are tools out there. Follow body positive like Instagrammers, you know, that know how to embrace their flaws, embrace their curves, you know, embrace whatever body type. Like that's what I do. I follow like so many different body types so that I don't program my brain that skinny is good. I kind of try to like cancel that, and canceling that is super hard, but that's why we should focus on it more. We should be more passionate, be more empowered to pour out our energy into deprogramming that thing that diet culture has installed in our brains. Yeah, but that was my story.
Well, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
and being super vulnerable. But yeah, I benefited from it, and I think many will benefit from this. And yeah, applause to you, and
Applause to you too,
us.
to us.
Yeah, for sharing. Because yeah, it's hard. You judge yourself, so you're obviously scared of judgment from others. And that can be tough. But the Instagram thing you just mentioned, I mostly don't understand. Like I started unfollowing just like pages like Bella Hadid or Kendall Jenner, like all those models, because I don't want to see that. I don't want to look at it, and I don't want to have that installed in my brain. And someone I recommend following, her name is Ava Jules.
I
I
know
don't know.
her.
She's so lovely. I love
Oh
her
my gosh,
so.
I can't believe you know her too.
And her body type is so normal,
I
and
know.
she also talks about it. And I remember, like, I think it was a year ago, and she
Uh-huh.
uploaded a video where she speaks about just body confidence and the whole subject. And I could relate so hard, and I was so thankful for that video because it made me feel like 1,000% better. And also realizing that just by working out, you cannot change your whole body. You have genes, you have bones, you have structure, and that's okay. And it's good the way it is. And even if you work out a lot, you will never look like that if you just don't have the genetics, and you don't have to. Like, we all can just look the way we look. And
Yeah.
I just think it's scary how it can go from one extreme to the other extreme. And I've had like the binge eating thing as well, not as much, but just this like stuffing until you can't anymore. And my reaction was always, I don't know, just having to get rid of it, because it was just, there was so much I couldn't handle. But yeah, just what I've noticed by listening to you is that I feel underqualified again, like not qualifying as this anorexia thing. And like you said, maybe we can get into that now, to just accept your own story and not compare. Because what I think is something that's really big in this whole ED community is competition. Why is everyone comparing and wanting to be worse?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do
This
know
is
what you
so
mean. It's
triggering.
because like in our brains when we're suffering with like anorexia, like the points add up whenever you see yourself lose weight. So it's like, oh, if I'm skinnier than her, it means that I'm doing better at this. And
Yeah.
like in your anorexic brain, that's just the only good thing. Like the good thing that you're doing. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how it works. It's really toxic.
Yeah, and social media doesn't really, I think it's such a big part of it. That's just the only way I can explain it to myself, is why I feel increased so much over the years. just this false portraying of things, and then this whole platform for competition and comparing, and comparison is what it started it all. So maybe we should just all stop comparing, and even comparing it with our younger selves. That was really hard for me as someone that has always been titled as underweight, and I've been like, I wasn't anorexic, and kids in my school would call me anorexic or a stick because I was so thin, and it just wasn't, it's not your fault the way you look, like you just look like that. And then when you start becoming normal, quoting, like it's not, there's no normal, but starting to become more like gaining more weight when you hit puberty, it's like, whoa, I'm becoming fat, because you're only used to yourself as this, like, it's your identity, it just becomes your part of your identity, and that's so scary when that changes. And when you start identifying yourself with your weight, like you've mentioned earlier, that's just when it becomes toxic, because you only love yourself when you're skinny, like, and you can only love yourself when you look a certain way, and that's so hard to maintain. Also, what I want to get into is, as women, we have hormones that change every day. We're never the same. It changes every day, and it's not possible to have the same body as a woman your whole life. It is impossible. It doesn't work. Even if you don't get kids, you're going to change and evolve, and that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to have a little pouch in your belly, because you need that to function. And in this patriarchic world, I guess, because a man's world, it's hard for us to, as women, kind of fit into that, because for men it's more linear. They're not as influenced by hormones. They don't take birth control and all those things. That's what makes it, I think, even harder for women to accept themselves, and why it's maybe more spread and more common in women. I don't know.
Yeah, totally right. So like, please, people, do not comment on people's body. You don't know how toxic it is. You don't know how much consequence, because like, once you compliment a person about losing weight, then that person equates their identity, like how I did, with being skinny, and that's just so messed up. And honestly, like, you don't know, maybe that person was going through depression and was not, like, were starving themselves, did not have the energy to eat, and you're equating that to goodness, and that's really messed up, and we should please stop doing that. If we're all wise and if we're all educated enough, we know that bodies change, like Louisa said. We should accept that, and like I said, please be careful about commenting on people's bodies.
Yeah, that's really true, because one sentence can change everything. And another example for that is Princess Diana. We know her all if you watch the documentary. Charles is his name. Yes. He said one sentence. I'm not even gonna say that sentence because I don't think it deserves to be said again. And she had bulimia for 6 years because of that one sentence. I mean, she was already insecure, but anyways, you never know what it can do. And yeah, I totally agree. So do you want to add anything before we
wrap this up? Yeah, this has been quite a long one, but I think it has been all so like valuable.
For sure.
Let's see, anything to add? I would say like, what helps me, girls or guys, whatever, is I picture myself in the future, like I'm 70 years old or 80 years old, sitting on my comfy couch or whatever, being a grandma, looking back, like, will I really say, oh my gosh, I had such a snatched waist when I was 20 years old? Would I say that? Will I be happy saying that after all the tears and all the mental strain that I put myself through it? No, I'm going to regret it. Or would I say, I'm so glad that I was free from food and all those not all, but like some of the ED thoughts, and was able to live freely and express myself. Like that really helps me a lot because I don't want to regret. I don't want to spend a whole chunk of my life worrying about this, worrying about how I look, and forget how to live my life.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to wrap this up?
No, not really. Just maybe if like don't compare yourself to what we just said. If your ED looks different, that's okay too. And where you're seeking help, even if it's not as bad. If you feel stressed by it and if you feel pressure to look a certain way, and just get therapy because it can never do any harm. And yeah, it's okay if your story is different.
Yeah.
Your story doesn't have to be the same.
Exactly.
That's all I
All
want to
right.
say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you as well.